It's exactly 8 p.m. car local time and you're watching Qnews. As we approach the one-year anniversary of the war in Gaza, we focus on the far-reaching impacts of sustained Israeli aggression on the region. This war on Gaza has not only caused widespread loss of life and destruction, but has also shifted the geopolitical dynamics, with significant repercussions for neighboring countries and the international community. In tonight's special coverage, we provide a detailed analysis of the key developments over the past year, tracing the escalation of violence as well as the severe challenges faced by the people of Gaza. Stay with us for an in-depth look at the conflict's timeline and its broader consequences. Israeli occupation forces have caused widespread destruction to infrastructure and homes during their military incursion into the city of Jenin. Israeli bulldozers once again destroyed the horse roundabout area and the street leading to the eastern west entrance to Jenin Governmental Hospital, completely leveling it. Bulldozers also destroyed the entrances to shops and homes on the street and closed them with dirt mounds, while also smashing vehicles. Israeli aggression in Gaza has continued unabated since the war began last October, with recent violence escalating in various locations, including Tul Karam in the northern West Bank and Jerusalem. Israel has intensified its military operations, conducting an airstrike with an F-16 fighter jet that targeted a coffee shop in Tul Karam. This marks the first use of a warplane in the occupied West Bank in 2 decades. The Palestinian Ministry of Health has reported that 18 Palestinians, including children, were killed in the airstrike, making it the deadliest attack in the West Bank in years. And now we turn to my colleague Graham Morsi as we take a deeper look at the roots of Israel's war on Gaza, from territorial disputes to political tensions that have shaped decades of unrest. As we trace the developments leading up to the significant events of October 7, we examine how Gaza's blockade, repeated escalations, and increasing violence have continued to fuel this circle of destruction and resistance.
Israel's war on Gaza has deep roots marked by territorial disputes and political tensions. For decades, issues like blockade of Gaza, settlements, refugee status, and the status of Jerusalem have contributed to the ongoing strife. The Israeli blockade of Gaza since 2007 has led to severe shortages of essential supplies, high unemployment rates, and deteriorating living conditions. The blockade has also fueled resentment among Gazans, fueling resistance and contributing to conflict escalation. The 2014 Israeli aggression on Gaza led to extensive destruction and over 2,200 Palestinian martyrs. This escalation worsened the humanitarian crisis and fueled animosity towards Israel, causing resentment and a desire for retaliation. In recent years, there have been several escalations, including the 2021 aggression that claimed the lives of 256 Palestinians. This conflict intensified feelings of animosity. Following the 2021 Israeli aggression, there were tenuous ceasefires. However, sporadic violence continued, including rocket fire from Gaza and retaliatory airstrikes by Israel, further entrenching the cycle of violence. In early 2023, tensions escalated again due to clashes at the holy sites in Jerusalem as Israeli illegal settlers repeatedly broke into the compound of Al-Aqsa Mosque under heavy protection from the Israeli police. These incidents sparked protests and renewed violence. Throughout the summer of 2023, economic conditions in Gaza worsened, exacerbating frustrations. Blockades and limited access to resources led to increased unrest among the population. Hamas, the governing body in Gaza, sought to assert its authority, leading to rising tensions with Israel. This included increased rocket fire in response to perceived Israeli aggression. On September 30th, 2023, a significant increase in rocket fire was reported, with over 100 rockets launched in a single day. Israel responded with targeted airstrikes, intensifying the cycle of violence. Finally, after decades of tension between Palestinians and Israelis, and as a result of the Israeli blockade, provocations and ongoing aggressions, Hamas has, on October 7th, 2023, held a coordinated attack, leading to widespread casualties, all-out Israeli aggression, and significant regional tensions, fundamentally altering the landscape of the conflict.
Thank you, Riham Morsi. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we mark the one-year anniversary of the ongoing war in Gaza, the region continues to grapple with the profound consequences of relentless Israeli aggression. The conflict has not only devastated countless lives, but also reshaped the geopolitical landscape, leaving a lasting impact on neighboring countries and the international community. And to shed light on the current situation in Gaza and its implications, we turn to our special report by Jumana Hashim. In this report, Jumana will provide an overview of the key events and turning points that have defined this past year, offering a concise timeline of the escalation in hostilities and the challenges faced by Gaza during this stormy period.
Gaza before the war was like this. What did the harsh and brutal Israeli aggression do to it? It is Gaza, and the calendar indicates the beginning of October 2023. The situation seems very normal, with nothing to worry about. Life lacks much optimism, but holds a little hope. There are those who work, those who study, those who dream, and those who wake up to achieve their dreams. Nothing disturbs the peace of life in Gaza, except for the continuing and ongoing Israeli blockade that has lasted for 17 years, and the repercussions of the military operations carried out by Israel during these years of siege. These conditions were a prelude to what happened on Tuesday, October 7th, when Hamas launched an attack on the Gaza border settlements, coinciding with an assault of about 3,000 rockets that killed around 1,400 Israelis and captured others. The event was like a thunderbolt that struck the Israeli government, which was in a state of complete relaxation. The shock was tremendous and immense for Prime Minister Netanyahu, as well as the Israeli army. Israel declared a state of total war on the Gaza Strip, a war not only with planes, artillery, and ammunition, but also with starvation, thirst, and indeed torture. This war is ongoing. Nothing was left, not even a stone. And it truly contains many unforgettable moments that will remain etched in memory. And here, right now, we remember on October 17th, 2023, here in the courtyard of Mehmedani Hospital, where hundreds of Palestinians gather in search of treatment and fleeing from the death that rains down upon the heads of people in Gaza, the most truly horrific and unfortunate massacre occurred in this aggression. In search of a safe place to avoid death, some residents of Gaza have fled to UNRWA schools, hoping they would provide shelter from the widespread killing. However, the Israeli machine of death and destruction has targeted about 70% of these schools. resulting in the deaths of 539 people who were taking refuge there, including 30 individuals who had sought shelter since the beginning of the Israeli aggression on the Gaza Strip. In its aggression against Gaza, Israel used missiles and bombs referred to as thermal or chemical weapons, which are unconventional and internationally banned weapons prohibited from use against humans, most of which are of American manufacture. According to the Civil Defense Authority in the Gaza Strip, the bodies of 1,760 martyrs vaporized due to these internationally banned weapons, while hundreds of Palestinians were waiting to receive aid from the air. The distribution of assistance turned into a humanitarian tragedy that also resulted in dozens being killed amid conflicting statements and circumstances that have not been precisely defined, including gunfire from Israeli soldiers. So far, the Palestinian Ministry of Health has announced that the death toll from the Israeli aggression has exceeded 41,000, and the numbers are expected to rise. What has happened in the Gaza Strip is an earthquake in all its degrees on the scale of humanity. Why was the international community not disturbed by the unlivable conditions in the Gaza Strip before October 7th? And why did it turn a blind eye to the most deadly and destructive bombing campaigns in modern history that took place in the Gaza Strip after October 7th? There is only one answer to these questions. Israel has been and continues to be supported by America and the West, regardless of its actions, and the rights of the Palestinians receive no attention from the international community. How long will the suffering, tragedy, and pain continue?
Let's turn now to our correspondent, Yusuf Abu-Quaik, for an in-depth report on the severe challenges that women in Gaza are facing. As the Israeli aggression continues into its second year, the Palestinian plight grows more desperate under the brutal conditions in the occupied territories.
بعد عام على الحرب تكتوي أم إبراهيم بنار الفقد وتخنقها العبرات كلما استذكرت أبنائها ودفء بيتها المدمر. فالنزوح القسري والواقع الاقتصادي المنهك أجبر المرأة الفلسطينية على الجلوس أمام هذا الفرن لتشارك زوجها رحلة الحصول على قوت يومهم.
تعبنا بكل معاني الكلمة، تعبنا نعيش حياة مش حياتنا، لا أكل نظيف لا مي نظيفة، خوف وقلق وصغارنا. دفنت ولدين أنا، دائما بفكر على مين الدور، مين جاي الدور، مين بدي أخسر، وين المرة بدنا نروح، هذه 7 مرة أنزح.
الحرب وهي تطوي عامها الأول تختطف أكثر من 10,000 امرأة وتحرم 6,000 أسرة من أمهاتها، بينما تجبر السيدات على العيش داخل هذه الخيام المهترئة.
بعد سنة والله ما فينا نتحمل شهر كمان، شهر ما فينا نتحمل، وهي جاي لك شتاء، يعني الشتاء هذا ايش بده يصير فينا؟ الخيمة صارت 5 بواحد، يعني صارت غرفة ضيافة، صارت غرفة أطفال، صارت غرفة نوم، صارت مطبخ، صارت حمام. يعني الحمد لله على كل حال، بس يعني والله تعبنا، الأمانة تعبنا، مش ضايل يعني حياة، يعني لسه الموت أحسن من الحياة هذه.
على مدار عام لفحت الشمس وجوه النساء النازحات واستوطنت الأمراض أجسادهن، وبقين يقاومن من أجل أسرهن بانتظار انتهاء حرب الإبادة والتجويع.
نفس اليوم أروح قبل بكرة، نفسي أروح على بيتنا المهدود، أقعد جنبه هناك وألم أولادي حواليا، أولادي 6 وبناتي 6، وين أقعد أنا وياهم يا خالة؟ بدي ألمهم حواليهم، بيجوني يعني هم من بلد ثاني بلد يجزروني هنا، كل جمعة بيجيني ولد، كل بنت تجيني، كل 5 أيام تجيني بنت تشوفني وجعانة، طيب لأن أنا مريضة.
وعلى الرغم من كل هذه الظروف إلا أن نساء غزة يظهرن قوة وإنسانية فائقة في كفاحهن من أجل البقاء. كلما طال أمد الحرب ازدادت معاناة النساء اللواتي أجبرن على النزوح بعد تدمير منازلهن، واستشهاد عدد من أفراد الأسرة. فالواقع المأساوي هنا يؤكد الحاجة الماسة إلى وقف الحرب والبحث عن كل السبل الكفيلة بالخلاص من حياة الخيام. من مدينة خان يونس، يوسف أبو كويك، هنا القاهرة عاصمة الخبر.
הסכסוך הזה הוא לא על היעדר מדינה פלסטינית, אלא קיומה של מדינה יהודית. אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה. האויב ישלם מחיר שהוא לא ידע כמותו. זהו השלב השני של המלחמה, שמטרותיה ברורות. לא דרום אפריקה, זה לא אנחנו שבאנו לבצע רצח עם. America and Israel must stand together. מי שרוצה החטופים לא רוצה עסקה.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has proposed renaming the ongoing conflict now in its second year from Iron Swords to the War of Resurrection. This request was made during a cabinet meeting held to mark the anniversary of the conflict on October the 7th. According to the Israeli media, some ministers accused Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara of blocking the release of a video related to the meeting. In response, Baharav Miara stated she was unaware of such a directive and left the meeting when the discussions became contentious. This proposal comes in continued tensions and debates within the Israeli government regarding the conflict and its ramifications. For further analysis on the current situation in Gaza, we are joined by international relations specialist Dr. Mohammed Osman. Welcome to Qnews, Dr. Osman.
Hi, Rana. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Osman, do you believe this renaming reflects a broader ideological or strategic shift within the Israeli government regarding the war on Gaza?
Well, in actuality, it does not reflect a certain shift, but it rather proves and asserts the existing ideological setting of the current Israeli government and the current governing body or governing elite within the state of Israel. A government dominated by the far right, especially the religious far right, and that is becoming more and more extreme. The renaming, the potential or the proposed renaming of the war to a war of resurrection, and using such doomsday analogy, basically apocalyptic terms, only describes what has been going on in Gaza for the past year. For over a year, or for exactly a year, Israel has conducted a systemic process of genocide in the Gaza Strip. According to official figures, 50,000 people are either dead or missing. Independent estimates by reputed independent academic bodies actually estimate that the death toll might be much higher, might be even more than 180,000. The displacement of the entirety of the Gaza Strip, the destruction of 80% of all of the infrastructure and the housing unit and the totality of the infrastructure basically of the Gaza Strip over the past year. This is a textbook campaign of genocide. And using such names or such terms or such acronyms for this war, such as a war of resurrection, something that might be synonymous to an Armageddon, and this sort of biblical, Quranic, apocalyptic terms actually does signify how radicalized the Israeli government has become, and how absolutist in their aims, and the zero-sum approach they have been taking towards resolving their security challenges in Gaza, unfortunately. So I do not think that it signals a shift. It rather stresses or asserts or proves that this government is actually engaging overtly in acts of genocide and extermination and ethnic cleansing and mass displacement, all crimes under international law.
Dr. Mohammed, the meeting where this proposal was made was reportedly tense, with accusations directed at Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara. How do internal Israeli political tension influence their approach to the war on Gaza?
The governing coalition in Israel does have its own divisions within it. There are divisions within the Likud party, divisions between the ultra-religious right and supposedly the regular right of Netanyahu. However, these divisions and disagreements are not detrimental to the functioning of the Israeli government. So today's disagreement or a reported exchange in the meeting between the Attorney General and some ministers in the Israeli cabinet do not really signify that there is a crisis in the Israeli government. This has been the case for the past year and even before that within this Israeli government. However, Netanyahu now is even standing on much more solid grounds than he was standing 1 year ago, ironically.
Dr. Mohammed, sorry to interrupt you, but do you read or have the sense that there is internal divisions in the Israeli government at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think these are regular disagreements. These are regular tensions between members of the government, which is expected, and it is something that is very reminiscent of Israeli governments of the past. However, there is no crisis or no severe division that actually threatens the collapse of the Israeli government. What I was about to say before you ask your question will actually complement the answer, that actually Netanyahu, after the onslaught and the war of aggression he launched on Lebanon a couple of weeks ago, along with the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah and the decimation of the leadership of Hezbollah, his government is actually now even stronger. Some members of the far right that were opposed to Netanyahu, like Gideon Sa'ar, for example, has decided to join the government, which means that now the government has the support of 4 more seats in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, which means that he is even in a more secure position. And other disenfranchised members of the Israeli right that used to be opposed to Netanyahu are now actually seeking reconciliation with the Israeli prime minister and might actually join him in the coalition. So these divisions, unfortunately, are by no means a signal of a severe division or an imminent collapse of the Israeli government. So
okay, sir, as we're on, a year has passed and we're moving on to the second year. Netanyahu had 4 objectives or goals, which are retrieving detainees, destroying Hamas, installing a new government not affiliated to the PLO or Hamas, return residents to the north, and he hasn't, unfortunately, accomplished any of his goals. How do you read this, sir?
Indeed, he utterly failed in accomplishing any of his announced 4 objectives. The hostages, most of them, over half of them, are still in Gaza, or the detainees rather, are still in Gaza in Hamas's custody. He managed to secure the release of some of them through a negotiated deal mediated by Qatar, Egypt, and the United States. However, instead of resuming the diplomatic route, he decided in November 2023, just 1 week after the temporary ceasefire or the truce, to go back into direct hostilities. So the result was he managed to return some of the detainees, about less than 10 of them, by force, but he actually managed to cause the death of over 50 of them with random airstrikes and indiscriminate bombings, which means that actually returning them is not a priority to Mr. Netanyahu's government, even though it is one of the announced war objectives. The second one, destroying Hamas. Of course, he did not destroy Hamas. You cannot destroy an idea. As long as the occupation lasts, there will be resistance. If we even imagine that he can liquidate Hamas, which is not even realistic or possible, there will be other resistance organizations that will resist Israeli and Israeli illegal occupation of the Palestinian territories. So that he failed. Installing another new government not affiliated with Hamas or the Palestinian Authority, that too he failed in miserably, because the right thing to do is returning the Palestinian Authority, the legitimate sole representative of the Palestinian people, to the Gaza Strip, so that it can administer the Gaza Strip without any Israeli presence. However, he refuses that because Mr. Netanyahu is opposed.
Dr. Mohammed, because we're running out of time in 10 seconds, could you please say a very important thing that should be said at this point today, especially when we're marking this anniversary on the 7th of October?
1 year from now is that we are much more pessimistic than we actually were, that the situation in Gaza has become disastrous. Gaza has become uninhabitable, and Netanyahu right now, as we speak, and his government are conducting a major military operation in northern Gaza and displacing the remaining people of northern Gaza, apparently with the goal of annexing, of depopulating northern Gaza and annexing it in pure colonial imperial fashion. So unfortunately, I do not see any happy endings so far, as long as the United States and the West is reluctant to exert substantial pressure on Israel to stop its genocide and its violations in the Palestinian territories. We will not see peace soon.
Dr. Mohammed Osman, that was International Relations Specialist. Thank you very much for your fruitful insights and your informative knowledge, as always, sir. Now we move to my colleague Riham Morsi to take a look at how the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's persistence in continuing the war on Gaza, despite mounting casualties and international condemnation, reflects internal political pressures, which is a strategy to solidify right-wing support and broader geopolitical ambitions in the region.
Since the war in Gaza began last year, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has maintained his war crimes despite the ongoing international efforts to bring about a ceasefire. Over the past year, tensions have escalated in the region, with Israel conducting attacks on two fronts, in the south against Hamas and in the north against Hezbollah. But the question here is, what are the main reasons behind Netanyahu's intention to continue the war on Gaza? As the Prime Minister enjoys wide-ranging powers and responsibilities, Netanyahu seized the opportunity to launch a war on the Gaza Strip for purely political ends. Continuing the war hands him an important pressure card on the right-wing parties in the camp opposing him to thwart their efforts to form an alternative government. As Netanyahu faces criticisms from the centre-right, he has an added personal incentive behind the ongoing war on Gaza. New elections that might remove him from power could send him to jail due to pending corruption charges. Over the past, Netanyahu has been facing increased political pressure. Continuing wars in the region can provide him a distraction from the internal Israeli issues, such as economic challenges and corruption trials. The discovery of the bodies of 6 Israeli detainees in Gaza, tens of thousands of Israelis flooded the streets to call for a ceasefire that would bring all the detainees back and end the war. Large protests have occurred in Israel on a weekly basis over Netanyahu's handling of the war, as many are frustrated with the country's right-wing coalition, accusing it of prolonging the war in Gaza and putting the country's security at risk. Therefore, it's clear that the Israeli public has no faith in Netanyahu's handling of the war, while roughly 70% believe he should resign his position. The 2022 election gave right-wing parties a clear majority in the Knesset, allowing Netanyahu to build the most far-right government in Israeli history. Though this coalition has since become extremely unpopular, there's no way for voters to kick it out on their own. As a result, the government could only collapse if it faces defections from inside the governing coalition. But at present, the greatest threat to Netanyahu's coalition comes from his extreme right flank, which wants him to continue the war at all costs. For that reason, he seems intent on doing so, because it's the closest thing a prime minister facing criminal convictions might have to get out of jail-free card. Netanyahu cares very deeply about maintaining his war on Gaza. This indicates that he will be concerned about the far right's calls to overthrow his administration and will want to continue the war as long as possible.
In the heart of Gaza, especially in Khan Yunis, the streets, once bustling with life, now echo with destruction. A year of relentless war has transformed vibrant neighborhoods into hunting symbols of despair, resilience and loss.
شارع جمال عبد الناصر أو قلب مدينة خان يونس النابض، هذا الطريق الذي لطالما كان يعج بالناس على مدار الساعة، فهو أكثر الطرق ازدحاما في مدينة خان يونس، لكن الاحتلال الإسرائيلي وعلى مدار 5 أشهر دمر هذه المنطقة في خان يونس. لو سألناك كيف كان هذا الطريق قبل 7 أكتوبر؟
هذا الشارع جمال عبد الناصر في مدينة خان يونس، هذا الشارع كان من يعني أكثر الشوارع حيوية وأكثر الشوارع يعج بالناس وبالشرائيين، وكان غالبية الشارع هذا معظمه محلات تجارية فخمة، كان متنوع من كافة الأصناف والأنواع، من ملابس، من عطور، من استديوهات. خلاف عن ذلك البسط الممتدة من أول الشارع إلى نهايته. الشارع هذا كان حياة، يعني في حقيقة الأمر شيء يعني لا يوصف.
كيف تحول هذا الشارع بعد العملية العسكرية الإسرائيلية؟
والله تحول إلى جحيم، إلى دمار كبير. زي ما أنت شايف حالة الدمار والركام والهدم والبنية التحتية كما تشاهدون في الشوارع. لا، ما فيش حياة بعد 7 أكتوبر. الاحتلال أمعن في القتل، وأمعن بالهدم، وأمعن بالدمار، ولكن إرادة شعبنا بإذن الله تعالى ستفوق وستغلب هذا المحتل. بإذن الله سنعمرها ونبني هذا اللي دمروا الاحتلال بإرادتنا وبعزيمتنا.
هذه هي معنويات الفلسطيني رغم حالة الدمار الواسعة التي حلت بمدينة خان يونس. البلديات والهيئات المحلية تحاول جاهدة على الأقل فتح هذا الطريق الذي دمر الاحتلال الإسرائيلي فيها البنى التحتية. هذه الطريق حديثا عادت وفتحت بشكل جزئي، لكن عودة الحياة إلى هذا المكان تتطلب جهدا حقيقيا، والأهم قرارا بوقف هذه الحرب التي يشنها الاحتلال على قطاع غزة، وتمويلا دوليا لإعادة الإعمار كي تعود هذه المحال التجارية كسابق عهدها تعج بالمشترين. يوسف أبو كويك، خان يونس، Qnews.
Following the devastating events of October 7, tensions across the Middle East have escalated rapidly. We now move to my dear colleague Henny Saif, who will discuss the rising conflict and its aftermath, highlighting key military strikes and the growing humanitarian crisis that has ensued.
In the shadow of relentless bombardments, the air over Gaza grew thick with tension. As the siege tightened, cutting off food, water and fuel, the Israeli military issued an urgent call to those living north of Wadi Gaza, including the bustling Gaza city. Leaflets fluttered down like ominous leaves, declaring that those who chose to stay would be seen as supporters of Hamas. In the weeks that followed October 7th, 2023, the echoes of conflict reverberated along the Israel-Lebanon border, where violence erupted, igniting an already volatile situation between Israel and Hezbollah, and the landscape was marred by chaos. Meanwhile, the West Bank simmered with unrest as protests broke out, igniting clashes between passionate Palestinian demonstrators and Israeli forces. The streets turned into battlegrounds, and the fragile equilibrium of the region began to unravel. Since the war ignited in October, the exchange of fire had only escalated. Civilians caught in the crossfire, many from Lebanon, paid the highest price. The conflict displaced tens of thousands of individuals, deepening a humanitarian crisis that seemed to have no end in sight. In response, Israel ramped up its military operations, launching targeted strikes deeper into Lebanese territory, seeking to dismantle Hezbollah's military infrastructure. The air hummed with the promise of more violence. Each day, a reminder that peace felt increasingly distant. As fighting persists in Gaza, Israel continues to launch attacks against the Palestinian civilians, further complicating the security landscape. And in April 2024, Israeli leaders faced mounting pressure from its own population to resolve the conflict and restore stability in the region. A war long fought through proxies, assassinations, and strikes outside Israel has spilled into the open. The attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus could be the most dangerous escalation outside of Gaza since the start of the Israeli war on Gaza. The airstrike destroyed a consulate building, killing Mohammad Reza Zahidi, a top commander in Iran's Revolutionary Guards, and several other officials, including another senior commander, Mohammad Hadi Haji Rahimi. Israel then ordered people in southern parts of the Palestinian Rafah to evacuate, sending phone messages and dropping leaflets overhead. Families frantically packed their belongings and fled the area on foot. And hours later, Hamas agreed to a modified ceasefire deal. But Israel's war cabinet said it falls short of its demands. More Israeli airstrikes hit Rafah, killing at least 25 people sheltering in various homes in the city, according to Gaza's health ministry. Among those killed are 13 members of one family. Hundreds of people have been killed in airstrikes in Palestinian Rafah over the past 6 weeks. And since October 2023, Israel and Hezbollah have exchanged fire along the border until July, as Israel launched an airstrike in Beirut, assassinating Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr. Then, it followed by Hezbollah's attack on Israel as a retaliation for Shukr's assassination. In July 2024, the Israeli Mossad assassinated Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh by detonating an explosive device planted in advance in his bedroom at the Iranian government official residence in Tehran. Israel's brutality, as in July, violence in Hebron led to injuries and infrastructure damage. Also, there were major Ramallah raids, causing arrests and unrest in the city. In September 2024, a series of explosions in Lebanon, starting with pagers and followed by two-way radios used by Hezbollah, killed dozens and injured over 3,000. The blasts raised fears about compromised electronic devices and targeted Hezbollah strongholds in southern Beirut. Amidst this chaos, Israeli leaders warned of potential military actions against Hezbollah, leading to troop deployments along the border. As tensions flare across Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon, the shadow of a wider conflict looms as Israel hinders ceasefire agreement, threatening regional stability.
Thank you very much, my colleague Hani Saif. And now, as the war in Gaza continues, the voices of its citizens paint a harrowing picture of survival. We will now go to Bashir Geber to hear first-hand testimonies from those living through the relentless Israeli aggression, sharing their stories of fear, loss and resilience amid the devastation.
هي صور للحياة في قطاع غزة قبل عام من الآن. منازل يملأها الدفء، شوارع تنبض بالحياة، مدارس وجامعات لا تخلو من طلابها وغيرها من مشاهد الحياة الحضارية. لكن اليوم عادت غزة مئات الأعوام إلى الماضي بفعل عدوان إسرائيلي دمر كل شيء. فبداخل هذه الخيام الممتدة على مرأى البصيرة قصص معاناة وآلام لا يعرفها إلا أصحابها.
بيت انهدم، ولادي تشردوا، ابني برا وجوزي مفقود، مش عارفة وين إحنا بالضبط. إحنا هين مش عارفة وين إحنا بالشوارع مرميين. يعني الحر قتلنا، يعني بصراحة وضعنا بدوش وصف. الأمراض قتلت أولادي، دمامل، التهابات، يعني بتعرف المعلبات، كله معلبات وأكل نادر لما نلاقيه.
حياة محفوفة بالمخاطر، تلك التي تعيشها ناريمان التي أجبرت على النزوح والعيش داخل الخيام لتصبح حياتها مقتصرة على البحث عن المياه وتأمين أدنى سبل العيش.
كنا عايشين بسلام، بأمان، براحة، باطمئنان. الواحد يروح على شغله عادي، يروح على دواماته طبيعي، رغم انه اللي احنا عايشينه، ورغم هيك احنا بنجري ورا نتفة غاز، كابونا، تمر، اي حاجه، وين نجري زي ما الناس بتجري. وأسوأ حاجه عندك دور الميه، هذا حاجه تانية. يعني انت بضلك تعطل فيها الإقلان وتروح من مكان بعيد. يعني يا ريته كمان مأمن لك في المكان اللي انت كمان حواليك، لازم تقطع مسافه كتير بعيده عشان انك انت تقدر تأمن حالك كمان ليوم، وكمان ما بكفي.
في هذا الوقت من العام كانت المدارس والجامعات لا تخلو من طلابها لتصبح اليوم مبانيها والخيام مأوى للنازحين في ظل انعدام كل مقومات الحياة في غزة وعدوان إسرائيلي أتى على الأخضر واليابس. داخل هذه الخيمة حياة الغزيين لا زالت غريبة عن حياتهم ما قبل العدوان الإسرائيلي على قطاع غزة في عام نزوح ومعاناة مستمرة. لم يفقد الأهالي هنا آمالهم بغد أفضل. من خان يونس، بشير جبر، هنا القاهرة عاصمة الخبر.
This brings our special coverage to close. Remember to stay updated by following Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsED for the latest developments. Thank you very much for watching.